I have 9 o'clock. Good morning to everyone. Today's recording will be made available on our CTE website under our professional development page for CTE for later reference. Those of you that are joining us today realize that we have released a superintendent's memo on May 14th. That's why you're here today, related to an opportunity to submit a request for proposal for a CTE High School Innovation Grant. My name is Dr. David Eshelin, and I'm here representing the Virginia Department of Education, Department of Learning and Innovation, and the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education. Before I begin, I just want to take a brief moment just to thank everyone over the past several months for all of the work that everyone is doing. This opportunity continues to be yet another additional experience that could be provided to help enhance career pathways and opportunities for students. So we thank you for joining us and seeking interest in this grant. We really are excited about it. This has been a long time in the works. There's been a number of people that I do need to thank. And I need to start first of all with our state superintendent, Dr. James Lane. He is very supportive of career and technical education, but also this model. As you know, some of you were part of his webinars 2 years ago, focusing on several models that were available. Well, the funding is here and we're ready to move forward for those that are seeking an opportunity to expand a career pathway that's really targeted to the industry sector and the labor market data, but also providing students at no cost an opportunity to not only earn their high school diploma, but an associate's degree in that pathway in up to 5 years. And I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. Um, we do have the letters of intent, and we're very excited from last Friday to see the number of school divisions that have reached out and seeked interest in this opportunity. Today is our webinar. I am going to focus on the application of the webinar today, even though in the RFP there are components related to reporting. Once we announce the winners and the grants that are received by school divisions and their partners, we'll have a follow-up webinar really focusing on the reporting aspect. So I don't really want you to get caught up into that, as this is a short timeline in the development of your proposal. We will have a follow-up webinar once we announce the individuals that are receiving the grant for those individuals and their partnerships to really understand the reporting aspect. As you can see on this page right here, June 4th right now is the deadline at 4 p.m. for proposals to be submitted to our office and particularly to me. It does say that they need to be in a PDF format, and I really would like you to use the highlighted email that's here, the bdoe.cte@doe.virginia.gov, not only for your submission, but also for additional questions that you may have. We're really trying to track the information in the questions that are coming into our office through that account. So again, bdoe.cte@doe.virginia.gov. Okay, I'm gonna take some time today and scroll through some of the highlights that I wanted to elaborate on. There will be questions, I am sure. And just so you are aware, I do have Sharon Acuff, who is in our office, that is helping me today looking at the Q&A. So if you do have a question, we definitely do want you to put that into the Q&A. And I may not have a lot of time to get through all of the detailed questions. I'm going to highlight some of the ones that we have already been receiving, so I'm going to touch on those. But my intent is to look at all of the questions that are in the Q&A, and we'll look at them by category. And if there are multiple questions, we'll have a response for that category, and we'll create an FAQ and share that with everyone that's on this webinar today. And then we'll also post that where we post the recording of this webinar on our CTE website under professional development. So what I have highlighted here are just some of the areas that I'm going to focus on with this webinar. Again, a little bit of the background, the eligible applicants, the grant timeline, the application process, the scope of work, the preparation of the proposal, and then the grant award and administration. So again, we'll follow up in detail with the reporting aspect as we move forward. Okay, so let me jump into the introduction. This grant is really focusing on career pathways, and we know that career pathways are nothing new. This dates back to Perkins 4. The focus here is to really look at an innovative model that a partnership could develop to support students, really targeted to identified jobs, and looking at not only providing the experiences within high school to prepare students to be successful, to be taking dual enrolled coursework, but also to be looking at work-based learning targeted to that industry sector. It is the hope that that business partner could ultimately provide opportunities and jobs for students coming out of this program. So again, the focus is an innovative model that combines high school, college, and business and industry work-based learning experiences to prepare students for targeted industry sector positions throughout the Commonwealth. So we're all on the same page trying to meet the workforce needs of our communities. And we know each of our communities are unique in their own way. We also know that many school divisions have been doing this work in a number of different ways, or are in the process of doing some special things. And this opportunity really aligns with where they are, which is where I wanted to start with the background. Initially, this was just going to be a planning grant, but where we are today, we realize that we need that flexibility. So this is not only a planning grant, it can also be an implementation grant for school divisions that have these partnerships established and the work that's been identified, and really just helping to provide resources to make this opportunity a reality for students. So we wanted to make that very clear that throughout this process, those that win this grant can treat it as an implementation or a planning grant. This starts in grade 9 and culminates in the attainment of an industry recognized credential, a high school diploma, and an associate's degree in up to 5 years. Now, ultimately, you may have students that meet those requirements and finish at the exact same time, and that's great. In 4 years, they earn their high school diploma and their associate's degree. Not every student is going to follow that exact pathway, so we realize there is a need for up to that 5th year. So that opportunity will be there for students that meet the age requirements. So in looking at ADM, the average daily membership, what we're looking at here is a student before August 1st, before they turn 20, this school year going into that 5th year, they would meet the ADM requirements and still be counted in that total for the school. So that's what we mean by up to 5 years. That additional flexibility is there. We realize the innovative models that are out there. There'll be summer opportunities, a trimester. There'll be opportunities to really work on professional development, not only for secondary teachers, for post-secondary teachers as well, and also preparing students to be prepared to take dual enrolled college courses. So there may be additional needs to do things beyond the traditional school year, and this grant could help provide that and those opportunities. The program, again, is offered at no cost to students and includes work-based learning experiences such as, but not limited to, mentorships and paid internships designed to prepare students for positions in an identified career. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you can see the benefits behind the grant itself, providing these experiences and opportunities in a succinct way. We know the success of career pathways, and that is the continued commitment through Perkins 5. So this opportunity is right in line with the goals and initiatives of Perkins 5. The program, I also listed here some additional designed advantages, trying to make sure that students are aware of opportunities like this. So the promotion of opportunities of career choice and preparation. This program could be a highlight for school divisions and community colleges, really creating an awareness of the need to fill the designated pipeline that the partnership identifies. Okay, eligible applicants. Applications will be accepted by a school division or divisions within a region meeting the requirements below. So this can be a region effort. That is an opportunity, and you have that identified in your application. The Virginia Public School Division must serve as the fiscal agent for the grant. All right, even though the lead for the grant can be a school division member, or it could be a community college member, I wanted to highlight that the fiscal agent must be the school division. So the grant application must be coordinated through the school system's central office. The Virginia Community College partners obviously play a critical role in this pathway, preparing students to be college and career ready. If multiple divisions apply as a consortium, I wanted to highlight this. Each school division must coordinate dual enrollment with their local community college. So we just wanted to highlight that aspect. So school divisions should partner with their local community college, even though you're working together in a consortium, which could mean more than one community college in that region. So we wanted to highlight that here as well. Industry partners, we all know, are critical. That's been the lifeblood for me for career and technical education, being able to apply the knowledge in a work-related manner. And the work-based learning experiences we know are critically important. This supports the profile of a Virginia graduate. This supports looking at the College Career and Civic Readiness Indicator. So we know that one of those options in those formulas, we know, is work-based learning. We know the profile is driving school divisions to try to continue to expand work-based learning opportunities for all students. So this grant is right in line with those agency goals as well. Eligibility requirements: the applicants must submit an MOU signed by all members of the partnership. In this RFP, this 37-page resource that I have for you, that was linked in the superintendent's memo, does have the core components of the MOU. If you want to expand on that because of some of the innovative things that you're trying to do with that partnership, you can. But at minimum, you must have what we have in the RFP in the section for the MOU, and it must be signed by all members of the partnership. Additional partners may be included based on needs identified in the geographic region being served. Please note that the BDOE is not a signatory on the MOU. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. Looking at the implementation component, each partnership will designate one partner as the implementation lead in the MOU. That implementation lead shall be a school division or a community college. So remember what I said earlier, the fiscal agent must be a school division, but the implementation lead identified in the MOU could be a school division or a community college. The implementation lead need not be the same as the school division serving as the fiscal agent. So I just wanted to highlight that. So the school division could be identified as the fiscal agent and a community college could be the implementation lead. So we just wanted to pay particular attention to that. Okay, so that is section 2, eligible applicants, and I'm just going to pause for Sharon. Is there anything, Sharon, related to a question related to the eligible applicants? Sharon, any questions?
Yes, I'm sorry, you probably couldn't hear me. We have a couple of questions asking if they missed the intent to submit, are they still eligible to participate?
I need to get that by the end of the day today. And we thought that may occur based on the information that we're providing today. So as long as we meet the June 4th deadline, that's what I'm concerned about. So based on the information today, somebody missed the intent deadline and they're really interested in doing this, please work with me and I'll work with you if you're having any kind of problem with a signature or anyone that is trying to complete that intent form. Reach out to me and I'll work with you, but we will give you that opportunity today based on this information.
Okay, those are the only questions so far, David.
Okay, great. I'm going to move forward to the grant timeline and application process. So I just mentioned June 4th at 4 p.m. is when we do need to have the RFP, the proposal submitted. That needs to be submitted to me, and you can use this email, or I would prefer you use the vdoe.cte at doe.virginia.gov. Again, we're just trying to track everything related to this topic as well as others. So that information does need to come to me by June 4th by 4 p.m. All right. Now, what I wanted to share in detail to highlight with you is that we will provide the preliminary intent to award notification on or about June 25th. So June 28th, that will be the follow-up webinar related to the reporting requirements for those that are an identified grant recipient. Okay, so June 25th is when I'm looking to award the intent to award notifications, and the official grant award notification will be sent to awarded applicants on or about July 1st. Okay, so again, June 28th for that follow-up webinar, I'll have a CTE director's memo with that information coming forward and the link to that webinar as well, and we'll include it with the information with the official grant award notification. Again, that will be focusing on the reporting component. Okay, so that is the grant timeline and the application process. The scope of work really gets into the core components of this innovation grant. And again, we're not limiting you to the core components listed here, but you must at least cover the identified criteria within the scope of work in the RFP. Again, not trying to create any bottlenecks as far as your innovation. You definitely have the ability in your application to identify additional components that you want to build into the scope of work into this grant. So I'm not going to read this in detail. It does, some of the information is repeated, again, focusing on that up to 5-year integrated scope and sequence will offer college courses and work-based learning activities throughout the program is what this scope is highlighting. I did want to make a highlight to this. The population should closely reflect the socioeconomic status reflected of the greater school community. So that's of that school division or if applying as a consortium through a region, it should reflect that region. A governance structure that includes a steering committee, including school division, community college staff, and business and industry is a component. A description of the partnership's plan for program leadership and collaboration must be included. So when we get into the components a little bit later on of the application, you will see that listed in there. That will be part of the narrative submission. Ongoing opportunities for secondary and post-secondary faculty to collaborate. We know how important it is in looking at models like this. The success has been identified because of that flexibility in schedules to be able to provide professional development and time for the integrated instructional planning. So joint in-service training to implement the up to 5-year integrated career pathway is identified. As well as the training of professional school counselors and higher education instructional staff, institution staff to recruit students and ensure program completion is important. So the professional development component, preparing secondary and post-secondary instructors to teach in this integrated career pathway, is of utmost importance. In many of the models that I've evaluated, that has been a core component, just so as it is for every other instructional methodology that we have. Okay, I wanted to highlight the program's sustainability beyond this planning implementation grant will be the responsibility of the local school division. So we'll get into more details here related to what you can and can't do with this grant to prepare this opportunity for students. So the proposal itself, I wanted to jump into this. This is, I think, very self-explanatory. It does break down the proposal components and the points. I also included a copy of the rubric as far as how the grant applications will be evaluated. I wanted to pay particular attention to a couple of things here. The application itself may not exceed 20 pages, excluding the proposal introduction pages, which is what I have listed here under A, which is a required component. It's valued at 10 points. It is an abstract. I'll show you I'll pay particular attention in the rubric as to what we're looking for the highest score in that abstract, but that aspect is not included in the 20 pages. The budget narrative is, but not the budget pages itself. So it is the narrative component minus this proposal introduction that we are calling the abstract. So within that introduction, there's a cover page, and I list further down here in this RFP, it details what needs to be on the cover page. You do want to make sure you actually identify on there, and it lists on there the actual amount of funds that you are requesting through your proposal. So that again is listed further down below on the cover page, but it does need to be listed on the cover page. The assurances, again, I detail that out on page 15. I'm not going to read through that. The abstract should be clear but brief of the program to be implemented. So a brief synopsis of the school or schools in which the program will be implemented, the primary goals and objectives, and the preliminary description of the career pathway under consideration. Just talking with many of you, it's exciting to see the different directions and ideas that school divisions already have, and they really see this as an opportunity to support what they've already been thinking through in an innovative way. So I'm excited not only for individuals looking at building this out as a planning opportunity, but the implementation component to support school divisions that already are moving in directions like this. And, hopefully this will help seal the deal and make this a reality for their communities. The next component is 20 points. It's the grant application, the narrative, and the timeline. So what I did is this section, the grant application, is the meat of the application. It's 60 points, as you can see, and I broke it down between the need and the narrative and the timeline. Okay, so the grant application need and then the narrative and the timeline. So we break that down further in detail here for information related to that component. Explain how the program aligns with the school division, the community college plans for students to be both college and career ready. You're looking at really looking for, how the partners will work together to expand and sustain the career pathway. That's been a critical, clear definition in Perkins 5 when you're looking at partnerships. Sustained partnerships is, and I wanted to highlight that, is the language that's in Perkins 5. So we wanted this grant to also drive and support the definition in Perkins 5 for building partnerships. So the sustainability of those partnerships, we all know how difficult it is to establish and then to get the ball rolling, but to keep in the drive and the initiative and the understanding from all parties of the benefits, is the work. So really thinking through that sustainability component will be critical in your application. Describe the current school structure, the student demographics, such as the total enrollment, percentage of English learners, percentages of special education students, percentage of economically disadvantaged students. Again, describing the pathway that you're building out and focusing on. Looking at it from the very beginning, you could even talk about work that's going to be done, even preparing students before ninth grade rolling into this opportunity. Describe the process for student recruitment that focuses on special populations. We've identified what that means here, and this is coming out of Perkins 5. That's important. Describe the process to ensure parents and guardians understand the scope and sequence and overall goals of the program. When you think through that, a student needs to know up front, entering this program in grade 9, that they may not graduate on time with their peers and their friends. They may need that additional year. And then at that time, they graduate with their high school diploma and their associate's degree. So that recruitment and that understanding of the scope and sequence of your overall plan really needs to be communicated in the recruitment aspect and communicated upfront and be, to ensure there's clear understanding and expectations throughout the entire pathway. Describe the process for identifying key staff from each of these categories is important. Again, with that advisory focus that we've talked about earlier. Describe how the secondary and post-secondary faculty and staff will collaborate. So that alignment between secondary and post-secondary is going to be critically important. The work-based learning experiences, building on the students' benefits of classroom instruction and career and technical student organizational opportunities, we know is critically important. So that is 60% total. So again, 20 and 40, breaking that category down. The evaluation, again, not to read through this, at 15 points. I did want to pay particular attention to the budget. The budget, the grant funds requested must be at least $50,000 if you are looking at an individual school division, but may not exceed $200,000 for a single school division. So anywhere between 50 and 200 is what you're going to identify on that cover page. If multiple school divisions want to apply as a region, that grant application must be at least $100,000, but may not exceed $500,000. So I wanted to pay particular attention to this. We've had support through Megan Healy's office, through the governor of Virginia, in support of a regional approach. So that opportunity is there, and we wanted to make sure the correct funding would be there to be able to provide that regional application. So both of those options are available. Again, a lot of flexibility within this grant. Now, I do detail here grants may be used for, and it goes through a number of different things that you can detail here. And you may have individual unique needs that you're going to need to communicate with me individually. We have 53 people on this call. I'm not going to be able to detail everything that's in your head right now. So we have this information listed, but I did want to focus on what the grant funds may not be used for. And to begin with, college tuition or fees, all tuition and fees and necessary instructional resources must be paid by the local school division. Acquisition of facilities to house the program may not be funded. Furniture to equip the labs or classrooms. Construction of temporary or permanent structures may not be used with this grant. Meal costs at conferences where meals are provided may not be covered. Purchase of career information delivery system site licenses, national, state, or local membership dues or fees, promotional items, t-shirts, keychains, bags, mugs may not be covered under this grant. Purchase of equipment for administrative purposes and administrative and indirect costs that exceed 5% of the grant. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight that. Let me just go through this component, and then I'll come back to Sharon when it comes to the components here, if there are any questions. The budget narrative is part of the allotted up to 20-page narrative. Okay, so everything that I've been talking about, excluding that introductory component with the abstract, the budget narrative I wanted to highlight is included in that 20 pages. So you're not to exceed the 20 pages. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the budget itself is not included in those 20 pages. And we really break down the budget document expenditures. For those of you that are familiar with a local application for career and technical education, all of these categories are the reporting categories that we have. So really no change there when it comes to this aspect. So the completed budget document is not part of the allotted narrative. So the completed budget document are the last several pages of this RFP detailing each of these budget categories. They are not included in that 20 page. So I just wanted to be very clear when we receive those applications. And if there are questions, we will reach out to the lead representative in the submission of your application if when we begin to review there are questions with what's submitted. But I just wanted to highlight again that aspect. Okay, those are the components. I'm going to pause right there and ask Sharon if there is any grouping, if there's a category that I could address at this time. Otherwise, Sharon, I am going to address each of these categories of questions through the FAQ.
Okay, one of the questions that's coming in is how many grants are expected to be awarded and what are the total funds available?
Right. We have $1.5 million. The total amount, as you can see, we built a lot of flexibility in here. The intent of the review committee will be to fund as many proposals that are in line with the RFP. So it really, based on providing so much flexibility, there is no single answer to that question, but understand that the evaluation committee will be driving to obviously encumber and use the 1.5 million. That is our focus, but also looking at trying to meet all the unique needs of the Commonwealth and understanding that, because school divisions are at different phases, they're not going to just go after a certain amount of money. They're going to really approach this. You really should approach this and what you need. But our effort is to try to support everyone that applies and is in line with the components of the RFP. But I can't really give you a number. We're really creating a lot of flexibility here to try to meet as many needs as we can across the Commonwealth.
Another question, could one division submit more than one proposal?
At this point, we are looking at the way the categories are identified. So if if you had so let's say, for example, you had two separate pathways that had two different committees, two different, partnerships. I mean, you're looking at looking at it separately as far as a pathway. We would look at that. We're not going to look at one partnership trying to provide two different grants with two pathways in one community. Again, we're trying to bring equity across the Commonwealth and meet as many needs as we can throughout the Commonwealth.
Okay, another question, can year 5 be a VCCS student only?
Year 5 is intended to meet the requirements laid out in this proposal in their pathway. In some cases, they may only have dual enrolled college coursework remaining. So it's whatever is needed for that additional year for that student to complete.
Okay, section C, the evaluation. The rubric states planning grant. Can we assume planning/innovation is acceptable?
Yes, that is a planning/implementation. So it could be either.
Okay. Is the expectation that students will not receive their high school diploma without completing the program?
That is the way this is intended to meet the program requirement. Now, a student may elect not to continue and may just finish with their high school diploma. That is up to the student. But the intent of this grant is up to 5 years for a student to have this opportunity to earn that associate's degree.
Okay, if a division is watching today and wants to watch on the 28th to build knowledge for a future year submission, will the June 28th session be open to all or just those who will be awarded the grant?
Very good question. I mentioned earlier that we're going to send that information and the link to the grant recipients with the formal application, actual award application. And we will also post that webinar. Clearly, that is an opportunity for everyone. So we will make that available and we will post that right where we have the information. Like, for example, today's recorded webinar, we'll post that. So we'll have all that information on our CTE website under professional development. Yes.
Okay, if you are reapplying with the budget, continue to be $30,000.
All right, I'm gonna have to, I don't understand. There's not enough information there for me to answer that question. We'll include that. We'll actually research it out and include that in the FAQ.
Okay. Are the grants for the first calendar year or over 5 years of the program goal?
I'm gonna address that as we move forward.
Okay. And this sort of has the same slant to it. Is the expectation that these funds will be expended in 1 year or over 5 years?
No, it's
So that's
okay. We're going to address that as we move forward.
yeah.
Good questions.
Since this is a proposal for a multi-year program, will the funds be renewable or are they just a one-time disbursement?
This is a one-time grant over 24 months. So I'll detail that in a little bit.
Okay. Do the pathways have to lead to an associate's degree or can they be targeted to a certificate program?
The intent is for an associate's degree, but looking at the specific pathway and the opportunities that are available at the community college, we will work with the individual partnership.
Okay, and then one last question. Grant funding cannot be used for necessary instructional resources. But I thought the grant said you could use funding for dual enrollment textbooks. Is that correct?
We're going to detail that in writing through the FAQ.
Okay, then we're caught up at the moment.
Okay, good. Thank you. The review, the proposal I mentioned earlier will be reviewed by staff for completeness and defined by the requirements set forth in this RFP. So if we do have additional questions, we will be reaching out to the applicant lead in that review process. I did mention this earlier as well. There'll be an expert review panel, including representation from both secondary and post-secondary to evaluate the eligible proposals based on the required application components. So we wanted to highlight that so everyone understood that the evaluation team will be from the secondary and post-secondary level. The point system is identified, and I do have the rubric that will spell that out, even though we've already addressed the point system in the scope of work. Each section will be evaluated on clarity, thoroughness, and presentation of out-of-the-box thinking. Okay, the grant award administration, and this is where I said I would provide additional detail. So there were several questions around the length of the grant. It is a one-time planning implementation grant. So I'm going to state that up front and be very clear. Within the completion of the review process, the division contact person, okay, will be notified of the status of the proposal. The anticipated notification awards, as I mentioned, will be on or about June 25th. I'm going to do everything I can to shoot for that date of June 25th. The grantees will have until April 7th, 2023 to encumber all grant funds. The reimbursement request must be submitted through Omega and on a monthly basis beginning in August of 2021. The final planning grant reimbursement request must be received no later than April 28th, 2023. So I think that was the detail that everyone was looking for. And again, this is not a renewable grant at this point. Currently, what we have available in funds is a one-time planning implementation grant. So hopefully that addresses. If that does not address and you have additional questions, please include that in the Q&A and we'll make sure to address that through the FAQ if I didn't answer that exactly. Again, I'm focusing on time, but hopefully that does. The performance gets into the performance identified through the scope of work. Again, I'm going to detail more of this in the second reporting aspect. And here are the reporting requirements. And this is really the segment that I'll highlight in the June 28th webinar. It does identify the reporting requirements, and also beyond monthly reimbursements, we also do have mid-year and then at the end of each year reports. So that information, again, I didn't want, because this is such a tight timeline, I didn't want to get buried down into questions with this. First, the idea is to win the grant. And then as soon as that is identified, we're going to provide this additional detail. I understand the importance of this, and as you build out your plan and the work and the scope of work identified with all of the partners, you do need to know this component. So we do have this information here for your review as you're preparing your RFP. But again, I'm going to go into a lot more detail with this component on June 28th. And here it has additional reporting requirements at the end of the grant period. So we have that aspect as well. Okay. The next several sections are, I think, very self-explanatory. They identify the components of the cover page. And here is where I highlighted the actual innovative funds requested should be on that cover page. Certification by authorized official. So we have that information. And this, again, is school board. So the applicant, let me just go through this. The applicant certifies that to the best of his or her knowledge, The information in this application is correct, that the local school board of this school division or the community college board duly authorizes the filing of this application, and the applicant will comply with the attached statement of assurances that are listed in the RFP. Again, that just provides some clarity. Here are the statement of assurances. Again, conducting educational activities funded by this project are in compliance with all of this all the laws that are identified here. So again, the grant is for the 21-22 and 22-23 school year. So again, that clarifies that as well from what we talked about earlier. Now, if the school division lead is a member of the school division, the superintendent and signature and information would be included in this section. If the lead is a community college lead, this detailed information would be included. So a statement of assurances, I wanted to highlight this as well, Paige, is required for each participating school division. The signed statement of assurances cover page is in and included and submitted in the proposal packet. Listed below here in this section, we have partnership responsibilities. Again, this is minimum. You may have some targeted responsibilities for different partners that you want to go beyond what's listed here because of the innovative concepts that you've identified. And by all means, you would include those in this section. But we do have minimum expectations that are listed here for each of the partners, and those partners would be the school system. It would also be, as I go through here, it would also be the community college, and then the business partners. So there are expectations that are here. Again, we're giving you time to take a look at these. We will probably go a little bit more in detail with these expectations, the minimum expectations that we have here for these three categories of partners in the partnership in the second webinar. So I wanted to just make sure that you were aware that those expectations were there. And then along with that is the innovative partner identification. So to pay particular attention here, you do need to include a partner identification form for any business, higher education, community organization, agency, or other partnering group that is anticipated to have a key or embedded role in the implementation of your grant application. And again, this additional information would be required for each partner. Okay. The primary contact signature would be here, and that information, it says here, you certify that the above named group is planning to be a key partner of the school division or community college or consortium of school divisions, rather, in the development and implementation of the innovative grant. This is the intent to submit. So if you were waiting for today and you wanted to review what we have, this is the information for the intent to submit. I would need to have this by the end of the day. It could be your superintendent or designee, but I do need to have this with that signature. It really should be in a Word format. If you need to export it into a PDF format, that's fine. I noticed that some people were having a problem with that. Here is the minimum expectations that we've laid out in the RFP related to the MOU that will be required. So we do have this in a format where you can fill in the information. Again, you may want to go beyond what we've listed here, and you could add at your own discretion additional components that you want to include. But this information is listed for you. So we wanted to pay particular attention to that. You can see we've got then the lead applicant, the higher education partner, the business partner. Okay, all that information is identified. As I mentioned earlier, here is a copy of the grant scoring rubric so that you can see, the clear detail related to what the review panel will be looking for. So the first section was that abstract, that proposal introduction, again, not included in the 20-page narrative. But we're really looking for that abstract to provide a concise and clear description of the plans for the program. So that's primarily the detail that we're looking for in that category. So we broke that down for the categories of points that you can see for each one of these categories. Again, if you have something specific to each one of these, let me know in the Q&A and we'll target that in the FAQ, because if one person has it, has that question, there may be others. So that's why I'm taking that approach, figuring it would be difficult to address these individual questions because of the innovative aspect of this and the uniqueness behind what partners will be trying to establish. So I'll work with each of you through the FAQ if there's detailed questions related to this rubric. The budget, again, brings us to the amount. I mentioned that earlier, but I left it here along with the budget pages broken down by each source of funds and code that is associated with each source. So the rest of this RFP details each one of those series from 1,000, 2,000, all the way down to the total budget. This, again, this component of the budget is not included in the 20-page narrative. The budget narrative is, but not this component. So that details the aspects that we have identified. Sharon, going through the MOU and this information on the budget, are there any additional questions that we can answer today?
The grant starts talking about an associate's degree. The end of the grant specifies AAS. Is AS acceptable? Whew, that's too many A's. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It depends on the unique pathway that the school division is trying to establish.
Okay. Are you allowed to use existing dual enrollment pathways for this grant, or must they be new pathways?
There may be existing work. You can definitely include existing work. We're not saying this entire innovative grant needs to be a new pathway, that we realize that there may be an extension beyond what has already been developed.
Okay, and then the last question that I have, well, no, I have two more. Hold on. On page 17, it says 50% of available space must be reserved for students who meet free reduced lunch income criteria. If we reserve that space, but those students don't choose to apply for the program, can we then enroll more than 50% of students who are not on free and reduced lunch?
We're going to detail that in the FAQ. The intent there is to make sure that, for this grant, that opportunity is made available. If it's not there, then clearly you can move forward, but we're going to detail that in writing.
Okay, and then the last one I have, when can students start the dual enrollment courses? It states different grade levels in the grant.
Typically, that happens in the junior year, but it's going to be up to the community college as to how they do that. And there is that flexibility, but it must be a decision made by that college president. And that's information that we receive through Virginia Community College System.
And then one more question. Did you say the project budget is not due with submission, only the narrative?
No, it must be included. It's not counted in the 20-page narrative. The project budget is not included in the 20-page narrative, just as the introduction with the abstract is not included in the 20 pages. but all of this that's identified in the RFP must be submitted by June 4th. Good question.
Okay, that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us. Again, this session has been recorded and will be made available for you for reference on our website. Again, we will continue with the reporting component on June 28th. If you do have any additional questions, please reach out to me. Again, your submission of your RFP grant application in a PDF format really should go to the vdoe.cte@doe.virginia.gov. Again, any kind of questions in addition that you may have as you begin this work, please reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you. We do want to make sure we address as many questions as we can. So even though I responded and it's in recording in here, we're going to take what we have in the Q&A and put something together in writing for each of you for reference. So you don't have to go back for an hour and walk through this webinar. We'll make that FAQ based on the questions that we received. And if I receive additional questions, as this goes, I will be updating that to make those answers readily available to all. Again, on behalf of the agency, we can't thank you enough for everything that you are doing to support students. This is yet another example of school divisions and communities, partnerships, businesses, community colleges coming together in a collaborative way to meet the workforce needs. Again, that is our goal. So thank you again for joining us. And again, we'll make this information readily available. The FAQ, I will do my best to try to get that posted by the end of the week. Thank you.